This day, co-led by UNESCO, World Bank and Asian Development Bank, I'm your moderator, Anil Mishra, Chief of Hydrological System, Climate Change and Adaptation, and Secretariat of Intergovernmental Hydrological Program, Water Science Division, UNESCO. Welcome to the thematic Day 8, Scaling Up System Approaches for Climate and Water Management. This session has been co-led by UNESCO, World Bank, and Asian Development Bank, and we worked for the months to prepare for this session. So finally, you are very much welcome. The session is very important in terms of climate water management in the context of investing in circular economy to achieve sustainable water management for municipal, industrial, and agriculture users and the natural environment. Without further ado, I would like to invite lead of three agencies to come over and provide opening remark. Lydia Brito, Assistant Director General for Natural Sciences, UNESCO. Satoshi Ishii, Director Strategy and Partnership Team, Water and Urban Development Sector, ADB. Michael John Webster, Program Manager, World Bank. Hello, Michael. Yeah. So the organization led the process, and throughout the day we have several sessions. I would like to invite you to remain in the session. We also have a roundtable discussion. Without further ado, now I would like to invite Ms. Lydia Brito, Assistant Director General for Natural Sciences, to give her opening remark. Lydia.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody, and welcome. It's really a great pleasure to be here with you and opening this first session on the day 8. And also very happy that we are working on accelerating climate resilience water management approaches through the circular economy. I really want to start by thanking the World Bank Group and the Asian Development Bank for cooperating and co-leading with UNESCO this event at the Water Pavilion. Achieving and maintaining water security is increasingly challenging under current climate variability and uncertainty of projected climate change, as highlighted by the IPCC 6 assessment report. While the effects of climate change are most acutely felt through impacts on the water cycle and climatic extremes, it is becoming more and more relevant and evident that this uncertainty is failing to support the development of adequate adaptation policies. Furthermore, the scarcity of water resources, coupled with the increased frequency and intensity of extreme weather events, demands urgent and innovative solutions. The theme of today's event emphasizes the connection between climate resilience and the circular economy in addressing the water crisis. According to the World Water Development Report 2021, titled The Value of Water, the report mentions that the circular economy will value water to the extent that each liter is reused again and again, making water itself almost become a part of the infrastructure rather than a consumable resource. The integration of the circular economy and climate resilience is therefore crucial for sustainable water management. The UNESCO Intergovernmental Hydrological Program in its Phase 9 promotes a disciplined and integrated approach to support member states in building resilience for water security in a changing environment. Specifically, as highlighted by this phase of the IHP program, it's about conducting scientific research on new business models, also the role of water utilities, and expanding engagement and partnerships and infrastructure and connecting that to the science that we are producing in order to support the acceleration of the circular economy transition in the water sector. We expect today's session will discuss the economic, financial, and environmental benefits of climate resilience water management strategies in the context of circular economy, emphasizing their potential to simultaneously address climate change adaptation and mitigation goals. And also, we hope that during this section, we will see some case studies and best practices from various regions demonstrating the success of circular approaches in forecasting, water recycling, stormwater management, and adaptation and mitigation of water-related climate risks. In this session, UNESCO bottom-up approach, climate risk informed decision analysis, what we call CRIDA, and citizen and open sciences will also be demonstrated as they are powerful tools for accelerating climate resilience water management approaches through the circular economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the message and recommendations of this event will contribute to convey the urgency of creating enabling policy and legislative environments and strengthening institutional capacities to trigger greater investments in circular approaches and achieve greater climate and water resilience. I thank you for being here, and what a pleasure to join you. Thanks.
Thank you, Lydia, for providing insight, but also highlighting the importance of climate risk-informed decision analysis in the context of climate-resilient water management approaches, which definitely contribute to circular economy. Now, I would like to invite Satoshi Ishii, Director of Strategy and Partnership, ADB.
Thank you. Yes, good morning, everyone. And on behalf of Asian Development Bank, I'd like to welcome everyone to this very first session of Thematic Day 8. We are very, very happy to have the joint session with the UNESCO IHP and then the World Bank Group. And of course, we are going to repeat almost the similar, things for ADB. It's really a great pleasure to, welcome you all today. And then this topic of circular economy is really one of my favorite ones. It's a very exciting topic. The climate change, water, and material use are closely linked, it's no doubt. According to the report by the ADB, excluding land use and forestry, 62% of all global greenhouse gas emissions are related to released during the extraction, process, and manufacturing of goods and materials. As the world population increases and the demand of resources rises, we simply cannot continue with our current one-way linear economic model of producing, using, and throwing away. We have to change that. The circular economy, by intention and the design, is restorative and regenerative. It aims to minimize waste and promote environmental sustainability through reduction, reuse, and recycling of resources. In doing so, the principles of circular economy reduce greenhouse gas emissions, reduce waste, lower carbon footprints, optimize resource use, and give space to nature to regenerate itself. The circular economy plays a significant and crucial role in our effort of sustainability and resilience to climate change. Despite this, only 9% of world's economy is circular. This means that only 9% of the 92.8 billion tons of fossil fuels, materials, minerals, and biomass that enter the global economy are reused annually. And here today we are in a water pavilion. In the era of water scarcity, we need to find innovative solutions to ensure that water is reused and not unnecessarily discarded. This can include treating wastewater, stormwater, and implementing more sustainable irrigation practices. Recognizing the value of the water in a circular economy, we can preserve and regenerate systems while incorporating nature-based solutions, recovering resources, and most importantly, delivering more climate resilient and inclusive services. Sorry. The good news is that there is an increasing global recognition of the importance of implementing circular economy principles into water resource management. The statistics shows that in 2021, the global water recycling and reuse market was worth 15.6 billion US dollar, and by 2030, this will be doubled. Today, many utilities are merely supplying water in a linear model. Session like this one, really to sensitize policymakers and then we water professionals and financiers like us about the importance of accelerating the circular economy approach in climate resilient water resource management. So in closing, let us use this session and wider conference of this water pavilion today as true catalyst of change. I really encourage you all to engage the dialogues, share your experiences, and collaborate on circular economy solutions. Thank you for your interest and passion. And then to this important agenda, I'm really looking forward to the discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Satoshi, for presenting good news about circular economy and investment. Let's hope that member states will have opportunity to use this news and translate so that we can get climate resilient water management approaches to address water issues. Now let's move on. I would like to turn to World Bank, one of the co-organizers of this day, and Michael John Webster, who is a program manager of the 2030 World Water Resources Group, World Bank. Over to you, Michael.
Thanks a lot, Anil, and greetings, everyone. Welcome on behalf of the World Bank Group to this day and to this session. It's taken a long time to get here. I've seen quite a few of you over video conferences en route here. I think some of the organizers must have had over 10 sessions or more just to get to this point. So it's quite incredible getting to Dubai, seeing familiar faces, seeing some old friends I can see from PUB and others here. And if you just look at the wall on the water pavilion, you know, the number of agencies that care about water, that want to do something in COP, that are trying to make this happen is really commendable. And thanks very much for making it. And welcome on behalf of the bank. And thanks very much to UNESCO and to ADB for being our partners in the day lead on this particular day. I think it's very significant, this particular COP. It's the first time I've been to COP, but I've seen it from the outside. But I think the way that water is moving up the agenda is significant. And I think we as a sector need to reflect on that and need to think about the consequences of that. You know, in broad brush terms, I do think on the mitigation agenda, energy is clearly the big sector. But on adaptation, it really is water. When I listen to my colleagues talk about the various adaptation plans in various countries and various sectors, most of them come down to some kind of water impact. And yet, many of the water people, the engineers, the financiers, the water sector folk that have been doing this for a long time are not at that table. And it feels in this COP that is starting to change. We had two very high-profile events on December 2nd and December 4th, in which all of the MDBs came together to commit to work together and to significantly increase the financing and the access to water and sanitation, to water resources management, to irrigation. And we're trying to penetrate into that space of climate financing and of being a much more relevant part of the discussion. But I do think part of it's also to get our own house in order. What are those linkages? How do you set that narrative? How do you actually tell the story that the climate story is a water story? I've just spent the last 5 years outside of the World Bank working for the city of Cape Town. And there we had a water crisis that almost resulted in day zero. We had multiple friends, such as Singapore, advising us on various aspects of it. But the key message I wanted to send today is that potential day zero was a climate issue. This was a 1 in 600 a year drought. That 1 in 600 year drought is going to become much more common. And the only way for the city to get out of it was to reduce our demand. But going forward, it's moving away from dam water, moving to aquifers, moving to reuse, moving to desal. And that type of shift that needs to happen globally will need to happen in many other cities. The methane story. I don't feel we're sufficiently on top of the science of it. Anecdotally, I heard in a session on Wednesday, a city like Kampala, 50% of their methane emissions are from poor sanitation. I don't think that's typical across other cities, but where is the sanitation work really penetrating into the climate finance? And I don't see it, and that's part of our job to do. Rice, a lot of, I think, us are water supply and sanitation. At the 2030 Water Resources Group, we also work with climate smart agriculture. Rice takes 20% of the world's water resources and produces 12% of global methane emissions. We're working with farmers in India, in Uttar Pradesh, to move them to alternate wetting and drying and direct seeded rice, which can save 30% of water and save 65% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm not wanting to make a whole presentation on a lot of substance. It's really a welcoming message, but I do want to say that the ability for the water sector to penetrate the climate discussion is around narrative. It's around getting to the table. It's around being able to make those linkages that others have been able to make and that we are not sufficiently there. We've got an exciting day. I think the thing I'm most looking forward to is at 11 o'clock. We've got a live debate with young and not so young debaters. And it's going to be an audience participation, and I hope all of you and others can join that. We will vote prior to the debate on a motion and vote after on the motion whether the debaters were able to sway the audience. So I really encourage you to join that and the other activities throughout the day. So again, thank you again from the World Bank Group. Welcome to the session, welcome to the day, and thanks to my colleagues in UNESCO and ADB for joining me on this.
Thank you, Michael, for very inspiring talk, but particularly two things that I have noted. Climate story is water story, and that is exactly, I think we have a common approach. And in terms of adaptation, of course, water is the means and vehicle for adaptation. So we really, we will have many talk. I see that keynote speakers are already here and panelists. And besides this roundtable and youth, we also have a session on flood and drought and climate resilient water management approaches. So I would like to encourage audience to stay active and participate here. But let's give one round of applause to our speakers so that we can move to the next session. Thank you. So the next part is keynote from three distinguished speakers. I would like to invite Michael To, Director, Industry and Technology Collaboration, PUB Singapore. Michael? I would like to invite Honorable Caroline Maywald, South Asian Water Ambassador and former Water Minister. And also I would like to invite Dr. Kalis Tindi Mugaya, Commissioner for Water Sources Planning Regulation, Ministry of Water and Environment, Republic of Uganda. So from the three distinguished speakers, we will hear on this topic that our speakers in the opening session just highlighted. And I would like to invite first, this will go as a gender balance. So I would like to invite Honorable Caroline Maywald to provide her keynote speech. And if you could do that within 8 minutes. Thank you very much.
So that set the challenge for a former politician. Well, welcome to you all for being here today, and it is great to be the opening keynote speaker in this really, really important topic. And Michael, I couldn't agree more with you in regards to water is to adaptation, what energy is to mitigation, and unless we continue to push the issue that water is the enabler of resilience. It's not a sector on its own, it's part of every single sector. And unless we do manage it in a way in which we can inform our politicians and provide for our politicians the opportunity to understand where water plays its part in every decision that we make and not and should not be considered at the end of every process. I'm going to start today by talking about what it's like to be a politician, a Minister for Water Security, at the bottom of a large basin, the Murray-Darling Basin, during the Millennium Drought, when ground zero was there. We were looking at running out of water for the City of Adelaide, came incredibly close to running out of water. We had no control over decisions that were being made upstream, and we were particularly vulnerable from a whole range of different reasons. Our irrigators, our farmers, were on 2% opening allocations at the beginning of the season. We had huge restrictions. We were using the blunt instrument of water restrictions to actually create the maximum mileage out of every single drop of water, and still we were coming very perilously close to running out of water. Every day was a climate disaster. Every day I was a minister. For the full 6 years I was a minister, I was dealing with crisis after crisis after crisis. Water levels that were dropping below the pump offtakes, lowering all of the major pump offtakes for our major cities, putting in water filtration plants for our country towns, creating new pipelines to reach water further upstream so that our irrigators could still get at least a little bit of access to water and that they could actually have water in their homes. We had masses and masses of area of the lower lakes at the bottom of the Murray-Darling Basin completely exposed, creating an acid sulphate soil problem like you'd never seen anywhere else in the world. So my job was great. And as a politician, I will always say to my colleagues these days that you should never let a good crisis go to waste, because it is at that point in time that you can really, really make a difference. And during the Millennium Drought, we spent $3 billion on water infrastructure in South Australia. We actually were able for the very first time to bring all of our government agencies together around the one table to actually talk about water. It was the first time that water became the central conversation about every decision on agriculture, every decision on mining, every decision on economic development, every decision on the economic prosperity of our state. Prior to that, it was a junior portfolio. As it is in most countries, water is a junior portfolio, and it's usually a regulatory agency that's considered by most economic portfolios as the portfolio that has the foot on the hose at the end of the development process. Water is not engaged up front where it needs to be, and if we're going to be truly serious about circular economy, we need to change the way our policymakers, our government agencies work together, and then our politicians, how they understand the interconnectivity across each of the agencies. You hear lots of buzzwords in water. IWRM, Integrated Water Resources Management, IRBM, Integrated River Basin Management, Circular Economy, Water and Sanitation, WASH, water-sensitive cities, smart water technology, urban water, agricultural water, industrial water, fisheries, navigation, biodiversity needs, environment. Now, when that all collides in the Minister's office, the Minister has no clear headspace to actually think about how you do circular economy in that. They are actually managing crisis after crisis after crisis. Where does the community fit into all of this? They only know their own little bit, and they have a look at the world through that tiny lens, that own perspective. How do we broaden that perspective? Because the real obstacle to a circular economy adoption and lifting it beyond 9% to 90% is going to be how our communities respond. Because our politicians are going to respond to the voters. And unless the technical people in this room are out there engaging in a manner that can be understood by the broader community, it's going to be very difficult to move from where we are now to where we need to be in regards to a circular economy around water. And leadership is the main and key component of that I'd like to talk about, because leadership is often seen as political leadership, but leadership is actually leadership at the local level and enabling that local level leadership to be enhanced, developed, and it stays long after the politicians have gone. So if you want to embed change, and you want to change the way people think about how we manage water, we have to change it at the local level. In South Australia, we had the opportunity, because of the Millennium Drought, to pull all the agencies together into a Water Security Council. And that included Treasury, our Finance Department, it included Ag, it included the EPA, the Environmental Protection Authority, the Water Department, the Urban Water Supply, the Agriculture Department, Navigation, Fisheries, all around one table, and there was one pathway into Cabinet. And that one pathway into cabinet meant that all of the conversations that need to be had were had amongst people who knew what they were talking about. How it was working before that was it would land in cabinet, and the poor water minister had all of these people who were on their phone doing other things and not really interested in what the full water portfolio was trying to put forward as a junior portfolio. But when we had the crisis that we had to manage, we were able to pull all that together. It was a critically important part of how we drove it forward. And to use that to the best advantage, I employed a water security commissioner who was a head kicker. She was a very, very tough lady. And we actually set the agenda that we were going to look to 2050 and we're going to work back from that. And we were going to embed in South Australia a strategy to 2050 called Water for Good. That was water that was driving the economic agenda, the wellbeing agenda, the health agenda. And Water for Good is still a document that now was launched in 2008 and is still a very much a live document in South Australia. It drove investment in the circular economy. It drove investment in wastewater reuse, stormwater harvesting and reuse, managed aquifer recharge, diversification of water supplies, desalination, $3 billion worth of water investment in one state for 1.4 million people. It was a big agenda. We also used the opportunity to completely reform the way water was managed in irrigation. And this is critically important because 80% of the water that is extracted for productive use is extracted for agriculture purposes, and it is the most difficult area politically to deal with. The farming communities have a hold on the political system like no other. And the only other that has a hold that's more is the big end of town dollar in the economic portfolios. And so you've got the two driving factors that are actually driving against the agenda for circular economy and against the agenda for sustainability. The agriculture portfolio, however, in South Australia, we completely reformed the entire agenda through separating land and water, moving to full cost recovery of water over time. We actually really forced through some significant change, and forcing through that change enabled our farmers to be more productive, enabled our farmers to be more profitable, enabled water to move to its highest use, and enabled us to vary and diversify the sources of water for irrigation. It's a really important component of community and industry resilience in the climate sector is to engage deeply with people and to ensure that you can have a broader and a more wholesome approach from the government perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, for a very inspiring talk. There could be many quotes from your talk. I noticed you can make a difference during crises, and you highlighted lots of things about the buzzword. You have to change the way we work, particularly at the local level. So these all, inspiring issues will probably inspire our panelists to come into the more details. Now let's move to Africa, and I would like to invite Dr. Kalis Tindi Mugaya to give his keynote, and please try to keep 8 minutes.
Thank you very much. Morning, everybody. I'm happy to be here. I just give some perspectives on how we look at climate resilient water management and circular economy. I'm from Uganda, and I work for the Ministry of Water and Environment. When we look at climate resilient water management, how important is it in Africa? We are seeing increasing frequency and intensity of water-related disasters in Africa, and these are hampering sustainable development of all our countries. In many areas, you see floods and droughts occurring almost in the same locations. We are seeing impacts of flooding in various areas. You can see impacts on transport. Children are going to school, they cannot reach school, and such a child may not actually concentrate even in a classroom. We are having destruction of infrastructure, flooding, affecting hospitals, roads, bridges. So you find that you are developing, taking 1 step forward and 3 steps backwards. And obviously, you cannot talk about development with these kind of situations. Road infrastructure, we have had cases where roads are cut off completely and people cannot move. have challenges of transport, migration, areas where we're having floods or droughts. People are moving to areas where they can find better services, and of course, all of this leads to competition and conflict over use. So in Africa, we are seeing a situation of too little water, too much water, and too dirty water. And all of this is actually occurring in most of Africa, and high population growth rates, environmental degradation, and climate change are making the situation worse. So what role can circular economy approaches play? We look at implementing circular economy principles as being key for adapting to climate change, induced water scarcity, and other extreme events. We also look at these approaches as being key in helping us to recover, restore, and supply water resources and materials over many years. And here, we feel that we need to activate the circular economy so that we can have a bottom-up approach. Again, it has been mentioned that you have to bring the people on the ground, because these issues are affecting the people on the ground, and if you don't have the people on the ground, you cannot make headway. And obviously, people are always looking at improving livelihood. So whatever we do has to ensure that we look at the benefits. So we look at core benefits of nature-based solutions, but also ensure that we have long-term solutions. So engaging the whole society approach, I think, as has been mentioned, is going to be very, very key. Again, water is a connector. We need to make sure that everybody comes on board. Something we have not done. We always want to move with the water community, and we are not bringing on board the others. And of course, citizen science becomes very, very important, and the people are going to help us to monitor the water-related aspects of the environment and also ensure that we improve awareness. Once people have bought into this, then they are going to be the drivers, and they are going to protect these resources. Again, here, we have a number of restoration activities, ecosystem-based restoration activities, which the people are doing. What you saw on top there was a wetland which had been turned into a garden. But through the efforts of the people, the garden has now been turned into a wetland that is storing the water, cleaning the water, and ensuring that water is available when it is needed. And here we are getting the farmers actually to take actions on the ground so that they can harvest the water, improve soil moisture, and ensure that water becomes an opportunity and not a problem. And of course, we need to look at decentralized and open data collection. At the end of the day, we need data, but it has to be collected at the local level. Open science, again, UNESCO has been promoting open science, where we need to ensure that we have data, knowledge sharing, and community engagement. The issue of capacity building is key, so that we get the people to actually know what needs to be done, and also buy into all of these issues and take appropriate action. The climate risk informed decision analysis, very, very key, launched by UNESCO. And here the approach engages the communities, where the communities identify the challenges, the solutions, and also propose adaptation actions. And this process has been implemented in my country, Uganda, where we are getting people to understand that the problems are caused at the local level. They are part of identifying the solutions and implementing them. And here the communities have been able to identify areas which are affected by floods and risks, and be able to identify action that need to be taken. And here we have used the science-based approach. Here the communities oftentimes prioritize activities which can give them many benefits. And here, in some of these areas, wetland restoration is prioritized, because wetlands store the water, they filter the water. But there are many, many benefits you can get from wetland restoration. Some small check dams are constructed in many areas where we harvest the water, use water for small-scale irrigation, ensure that we recharge underground water, and also ensure that we benefit broadly through nature-based solutions. So in many parts of Africa, and Uganda in particular, you see the communities engaging in activities like these. These are small check dams that will help store the water, reduce flooding, improve soil water availability, and help them to address challenges of droughts. And again, we're having some structures that are constructed so that we can rehabilitate the ecosystems, ensure that water becomes an opportunity and not a problem. In conclusion, what are the issues of concern for Africa and IHP? We feel that we need to improve our knowledge on the potential of circular economy and the strategy actually to create it. Many people don't really appreciate the potential of circular economy, so we need to invest in this. We have limited understanding of the benefits. and the impacts of circular economy measures, particularly for climate and biodiversity. Again, you cannot get people buying into something if they are not able to see the benefits and the impacts you are getting. And of course, limited capacity for science-based assessment and also assessing the benefits. And finally, limited access to finance. At the end of the day, we need resources to make sure that we implement these actions on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Calist, for keeping in time and also raising these issues that local solution can be obtained through citizen science and open science and climate risk informed decision analysis. Let's move to Singapore. And I always refer that Singapore is one of the most water efficient country. So we will hear from Michael Toh, Director, Industry Technology from Singapore. And please keep 8 minutes.
Very good morning to all of you. Firstly, thank you, UNESCO, World Bank, ADB, for convening this session, and we are extremely humbled to be present here. I always start a session when I have my World Bank colleagues with me by saying that one of our most successful model of urban water catchment management was actually sponsored by World Bank in 1984. It is still working today, 40 years on. And I am totally mindful that I stand in the presence of giants today. There are many things that we have learned from the many parties who are here today. And we hope to learn more. Even as we speak today, there's ongoing discussion with World Bank and ADB to see how we can look ahead and address challenges that's coming on for us. So firstly, a little bit about PUB. I think there are some of you who may not be entirely familiar with PUB. PUB is the National Water Agency of Singapore. We are a small island located in the tropics, 700 square kilometers, housing about 6 million people. Despite being in the tropics, we have been rated as one of the most water scarce country in the world, and we remain so. So not a single day that goes by without the politicians, the engineers, and the people realizing how water challenged we are. And the whole situation is even changing as we speak. We are seeing heavier rainfall. We are seeing prolonged drier days, hotter days. And we are fully aware that it will present tremendous stress on our already very water deficient, water scarce countries. So as my honorable moderator says that we are very water efficient, we are hardly there. And I think we need to work very, very hard on it. And one example I wanted to share was about water recycling. I know many of you do water recycling here in Singapore. We truly believe that water recycling and reuse is the way to go. We have successfully, over the last 20 years, developed water recycling, and we didn't do it alone. Apart from experts, we worked closely with the industry, and today we have a sustainable form of recycling. In fact, in the long run, we believe that 50% of our water can come from recycling. So it is something that we work hard at, and we couldn't do it alone. So with recycling, we also added desalination. Being a small island state, it's natural that we look at desalination. But these two sources are extremely energy intensive. So while we say that we have closed the water loop through our 4 national taps, we are now working very, very hard to close the energy loop, the carbon loop, and additionally, because we use a lot of processes like membrane, we have generated a fair bit of sludge, and so we need to now close the waste loop. So let me just talk a little bit more about these 3 aspects. First, the carbon loop. We are taking a lot of effort to decarbonize. We are using the 3R model where we try to reduce our dependence on fossil fuel. We are trying to use renewables. We are trying to replace it with more green energy through solar. Whatever we have over our small little ponds, we put solar panels. But one of the other things that we are trying to do is also to replace. And I think what we are trying to do is also pilot technologies that we can capture carbon, reduce CO2 from the air, from the water sources. So there are things that we do, and it's fair amount of experiments that we are carrying out in Singapore. And we're happy to work with you, and we're happy to share our experience with you. The other is a waste loop. I think we are looking at ways to not just like, as some of you mentioned, look at it as a linear form. Is there a way we can recover some of the materials that we have captured through the process? So we are looking at how do we convert some of them into building materials, things that we can put on our land to continue to be able to grow a city-state like Singapore. So these are endeavors that we have undertaken, and we are happy to really work with all of you. In fact, very often we call on innovation challenges. The idea is nobody has a monopoly of ideas. So where do we get the next big idea? Where do we do? But I think an aspect that I think we are proud of, we're happy to work with the politicians, of course, but I think the engineers and the industry has a very big role to play to diligently put in place from pilots, from technology to pilots to demonstration and to actual. I have a favorite saying to say that technology doesn't work out on labs or any corporate office. You need really good, hardworking people, engineers, financiers, multilateral agencies to make things happen. So how do we then deliver it on the ground? And we have benefited by listening, by learning. You spoke about it. But we also benefited from really strong leadership. And this is where I totally agree with you. In Singapore's case, we benefited a lot from strong leadership. And looking ahead, our challenges is not going to stop there. So we have really now bigger challenge about climate changes, hotter temperatures, the vagaries of weather. It's going to again come hit on us. So I'm totally mindful that among us, I'm sure that we have the solution to collectively come together and address our challenges. Therefore, I'm really very tempted to hear your views about what we are doing so that at least I can take it back. I'm not here to just share my views, but really I hope to hear your views, and I'll be happy to engage you all through. And one of the things that I wanted to offer you is that I think it's wonderful to have platforms like this. I think I really applaud the organizers. But even in Singapore, we contribute in our small way. The Singapore International Water Week, we do it every 2 years. So we hope that you all can come and join us, join the conversation, keep the conversation going, but more importantly, keep the action going and making it happen on the ground. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Michael. Besides many other interesting things you spoke, nobody has monopoly of ideas. And that's the reason that we are going to go for a panel discussion to see, and we are not influenced by monopoly of ideas. And so that we can come up with collective ideas, and that will inspire us to continue to make things so that we can benefit as you have benefited by listening. Okay, thank you. Let's give a big round of applause to all our keynote speakers. Thank you. Now let's move on to the panel discussion. So we have some ideas from opening remark from keynote speakers. We will go particular in a discussion with some guided questions. So let me invite in the podium our distinguished panelist, John Matthew, Executive Director of Alliance for Global Water Adaptation, AGWA, and a long friend of UNESCO. Long-time friend of UNESCO. Alicio Giardino, Senior Water and Climate Change Specialist at Asian Development Bank. I understand, thank you. I understand Iara Giacomini Director of River Basin Rehabilitation, Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, Brazil. She should be with us online. Can you check? Yes. Hello. Hello, Yara, are you there? Yes. And Mr. Ahmed El-Kadi, Department Head, Energy and Underground Infrastructure, Deltares. Also, long-time collaboration with Deltares on climate risk-informed decision analysis. So with this distinguished, and also Li Feng Li, Director, Land and Water Division, FAO. Li Feng, thank you. I think we are almost within the time, but 3-4 minutes. We need to catch up that 3-4 minutes. And with this distinguished panelists, I would like to start on the specific example, climate resilient water management tool approaches which have emerged to assess and address climate and non-climatic uncertainties that can be integrated within existing planning, design, and operational decision process. I want to start with John. So John, if you can briefly, within 4 minutes, give your thoughts.
Do I need a microphone? Can you hear me? Good morning. I feel very honored to be here, and I'm grateful to UNESCO for the invitation. I think we heard from the keynotes some really powerful examples of the need to think about water circularity from a couple of issues. I think one of the big ones is how to see water as a system and how to see water as a cycle. And circularity is really trying to bring in those kinds of concepts in, I think, a really powerful way. But we need the technical tools to help us be able to see that cycle and to be able to see the system in order to be able to inform our decision making, our investments, the way that we're bringing communities and decision makers into a forward-looking framework. I was really moved actually to see, I didn't know that this was going to happen, that we had a wonderful example of CRIDA, this UNESCO system, climate risk-informed decision analysis. And here in the African example that was presented, it was mentioned as a way to engage stakeholders. But I think one of the other, it's very effective at that. But one of the other things that's very powerful about it is that it helps us take our existing framework, which is mostly thinking about water in a kind of retrospective way, looking back at the way water was 30 years ago or 50 years ago, and place it into a forward-looking context and saying, what are the climate impacts that we're sure that are going to happen, and we need to be really robust to those. But there's a whole range of new impacts that are much more complicated, that we need to be flexible, that they're much harder to predict. And in that sense, building in essentially new choices and thinking about this broader range of choices and making sure that we brought the stakeholders along so that they understand and have helped articulate those choices is really important. And the risk, I would say, of kind of traditional approaches is actually beautifully illustrated by Singapore. Singapore does not manage its water in a watershed, right? Like it is completely insufficient water for its needs. It has to bring water across the ocean, across the Malay Peninsula. It has to move a lot of water, and it's bringing water out of the ocean, literally through desalinization and water reuse. It's thinking about many new sources of water that are not in a watershed, that are moving across the landscape in new ways. And that kind of redundancy, that a blending of different water sources is actually a really beautiful and powerful idea, I think, of showing the full range of circularity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and keeping very precise intervention. Of course, CRIDA and its contribution to circular economy. We will get into further insight. Let's move to Brazil, to Yara. Yara, you are from Environment Ministry, so how do you see, and I just heard that Brazil is going to host COP30, so we are also looking into that. How do you address climate and non-climate uncertainties in an integrated manner, and how climate resilient water management can contribute to achieve circular economy from the Latin America perspective, or particularly from Brazil. Over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, very clear.
So, good morning, everyone. Although it's 2:30 in Brazil, I'd like to thank you the opportunity for being here and appreciate the invitation and opportunity to share some Brazilian practices regarding the circular economy of the water. I have a very short presentation. Could I share my screen just to
Well, let's try,
make it
but
easier
try to make within 4 minutes.
Yeah, sure.
I want to
But
check
it's
with our
very-
colleague if she can. Yes, go ahead.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
So, well, so the first thing we are doing here is using the water as a connector of public policies. So it is the strategic framework that we are using to bring the circular economy of the water. So I can say sorry. I can say the first approach, it was the creation of a sanitation interministerial committee, which is the integrative approach, bringing together 9 ministries, which decided to develop decrees, which means legal framework, for the water reuse and also for the rainwater intake for potable and non-potable purposes. This legal framework allows us to incentivize people to do it. I mean, the different sectors of the water. But the innovation one is the one we call the Bolsa Verde, which is a kind of a fellowship using the framework of payment for environmental services. So while the water use decree and the rainwater intake for potable and non-potable purpose, there are guidelines for regulation to encourage and organize the circulation of the water in situ, as we can see here. We're saying that the missing water from the tap is the same water causing disaster. So how to keep the water to inside the territory to be able to people have access to the water and not to the disaster. So here we have some examples, and the decree that we are developing has the goal to allow these opportunities and these possibilities to grow up and gain scale. And the second one, which we call the Green Fellowship, it is an acknowledgement of the benefits that traditional local communities provide in keeping the forests and the territories that naturally produce and retain water through their traditional way of living. So it's a kind of innovation here, because the traditional people and local communities, when they are in the forest, they keep the environment which produces this water. And in 2023, this approach has already covered 194 areas, and more than 9,000 families are receiving it. So it is around $100 per family. They receive it each 3 months, and it seems too little money, but it means a lot for those who is living inside the forest, extracting from the forest. So the circularity here is that the traditional local people keeping in their territory, they protect the forest, they protect the land and the rivers and these hydric systems. So the systems, the forest, they are able to keep the ecosystem services and the biodiversity, which also related with the health of the hydric system.
Thank you so much, Ciara. We need to move on. because
Okay.
we are
What was
running
it?
we are running late. But the point that you have raised about traditional system, how that can contribute to circular economy, we will try to get some questions from the audience. So stay online. Let's move on. I would like to move to ADB now. And Alicia, how climate resilient water management approach can contribute to achieve circular economy? Can you give some specific example? And you please keep within 4 minutes.
Sure. And thank you very much, Anil, and a very good morning to you all. Perhaps I will start by highlighting why this is so important for us in the Asia and the Pacific region, and just to mention a couple of numbers. In Asia and the Pacific, we have about 500 million people that do not have actually access to basic water supplies, and about 1.14 billion of people that do not have access to sanitation. And of course, so this already shows how our water resources are so scarce in the region. And of course, with climate change, sea level rise that also can affect the quality of water with salinization of the waters in coastal areas. Of course, water becomes more and more a scarce resource and very precious resources. So we really have to think about opportunities and approaches to make sure that we make a good use and a very effective use of the available water resources. And to address your question, I would like to mention a few examples of initiatives that we are currently mainstreaming in our organization at the Asian Development Bank to try to achieve that. And I would like to start by some initiative that really plays a role very much upstreams with our clients, stakeholders. And one of the first things that is very important, that we find very important, is really try to create the awareness on the importance of climate resilience and circular economy with our clients, because by creating awareness, you can also create a demand for projects to move in that direction. And this we can achieve by in different ways. For example, last year we have set up the Asia Pacific Water Resilience Hub, through which we develop trainings with partners. And for example, this year we have set up a couple of trainings, one with Deltares, actually focusing on resilience decarbonizations with some of our agencies with whom we work. And then through these training courses, each agencies develop roadmaps that can later on be turned into kind of a pipeline of projects that really can lead towards resilience, decarbonizations. And another training course was focusing on the water, energy, food nexus with IC Delft. And again, this nexus between water and energy is, of course, also very important to try to embed and build the resilience. We also work on knowledge development, again, to create awareness. Last year, we produced a knowledge documents which actually Agua contributed to on mainstreaming water resilience in the region. And this year, we will launch actually at COP, just on the 10th, a document focusing on decarbonization in the water sector. And of course, circular economy is one of the ways that you can really use to achieve decarbonization of the water sector, and you are all very much welcome actually to the launch of this new guidance document. We also have set up a program which we call WOP4R, where we try to twin different organizations to try to learn from each other, organizations working in the water sector, so that they can really learn about circular economy approaches, water resilience approaches from each other. We work also on tool development. We have recently also developed a tool, we call it that STIP, that try to look into opportunities to try to make the best use of water and energy, and try to look at areas where you can achieve water and energy savings. Another initiatives, again, looking quite much upstream, is about trying to support policy development and through our project, like for example also through policy-based loans. An example is current activities and project that we are processing in Sri Lanka that really is focusing on trying to develop these strategies on climate and resilience. And then, of course, we do this through also project loans, really more downstream. And I stop this now, and happy to take any question.
Thank you for keeping exactly on time. This is, this figure that you mentioned only in Asia Pacific region, we are sort of, we are only 6 years behind 2030. How we are going to get SDG achieved? 1.4 billion people don't have access to sanitation only in that region. So it's a challenge, whatever we talk about here, how we really make things happen in the ground. That's the challenge that probably need to discuss from the climate resilient approaches, from the circular economy perspective. At the end of the day, we need to provide services to member states, and the livelihood needs to be addressed. Let's move on. I want to go to FAO now. Li Feng, you are the Director of Water and Land, and you have seen all these issues of climate resilient water management approaches. How do you address climatic and non-climatic uncertainty in the context of water and food? And what is the importance of climate resilient water management approaches, particularly in your task in FAO's mandate? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Anil. Firstly, really grateful to the organizers to put together the session and invite us to join. But also, I also want to recognize the other partners that you can see on this wall, and for the really collaborative, actions that we put together the water pavilion again this year, and that's really demonstrated the commitment from the broadly all the institutions that we really try to advance the water agenda within the climate agenda. So really exciting about this joint effort. Probably you noticed, if you noticed the program of this pavilion, on the 10th we're going to launch a new partnership. That's really to promote the inclusion of water and food in the climate processes, especially to embed water and food into all the climate, whether it's NDCs or long-term strategies or NARPs in the future. That's a huge gap, but I think we're facing a great opportunity. We have to address the other side of the climate change, which is about the water. Speaking about some of the FAO's work, we know, everybody here, we know that agriculture is the largest sectoral user in terms of water, right? So contribute to more than 70% of human freshwater withdrawal. And looking into future, that's going to be even more challenging because we got a warmer climate, and we need to produce at least 50% or more food, fibers, fuels by 2050 to meet the demand. And we look at the scenarios, even under the sustainability scenario, and then by that time we still need additional at least 25% of fresh water. Where we can get that 25% more fresh water to meet the demand is hugely challenging. However, I think we do see some solutions. Some solutions really address the water challenges. For example, the soil management. We haven't heard about the land and soil management. Indeed, soil and land management can really help to address the challenge. For example, the water scarcity challenge. Indeed, the soils with rich organic carbon can absorb so much water. And through FAO's work in many countries, we helping the members, the farmers, to improve the soil management to keep the residues, or even deploy like a tillage. That's really enrich the soil organic carbon. That will also help to maintain the moisture and water on the ground in the soils. And that's a huge contribution, both in terms of resilience, but also that's contributed to significantly improve of the productivity. If we want to address another big challenge, too much water, flood, and certainly it is a new challenge. Our minister from Australia talking about how Australia has been really addressing the water scarcity challenge. But last year, at the beginning of the last year, Australia also have an extreme flood event. So even in dry countries, in dry areas, we see flood is happening. And how we can capture the flood water, on the one side, addressing the flood risk, but also capture and store the flood water that could be used in the dry seasons, and also to be used by other users in the downstream communities. I think we heard lots of examples of improve the wastewater treatment and address the pollution challenge. And that's the same for agriculture. We can really reuse the water both in many places for food production, and we heard many cases that countries are using the non-conventional water for food production, but also for green belt, green cities, and also in the urban areas. So that's a huge contribution as well in terms of circular economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Li Feng, for highlighting land and water, but also agriculture's contribution on how we can really achieve circular economy, but also how to really implement climate resilient water management approaches and bringing water in the climate discussion. Thank you so much. And I hope this partnership that you are going to announce, as you mentioned, will be inclusive. So we'll have opportunity, all of us, to work together. Let's move on to Delta Res. With Delta Res, we jointly developed this methodology, climate resilient water management approaches, and we are going to upgrade it now with Agua, and John is nodding. So let me ask Ahmed Al-Qadi from Delta Res, how do you see this climate risk informed decision analysis really bringing services in terms of climate resilient water management approaches, and how we are going to do next phase? Over to you, and please try to make within 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. Coming from Deltares, we as an applied research institute based in the Netherlands, we of course have relatively long tradition in taking, let's say, climate change and uncertainty in socioeconomic aspects in the planning and design of water systems. And we have contributed to robust decision support or approaches like CRADA, but also adaptation pathway approaches, which mainly, of a key element of it is the collaborative decision making and working with key stakeholders. When it comes to the circular part, I think the approach itself is neutral to the solution you use or you choose. So we've seen also in some projects that actually the solutions that have been chosen are not necessarily circular. So we can go for higher embankments or bigger pumps as long as it satisfies the decision criteria, and it's mostly cost-benefit type of decision. So if you want to have the circularity included in the approach, I think you need to put that forward as an upfront objective. An example we have in the Netherlands is the Room for River project. So the Room for River project has a key objective is flood resilience, but it also had another objective, which is environmental and spatial, let's say, aspects. So you can think about that if you put it up front, it can be taken into account. If you want to consider it in the analysis, most probably it will be much more complicated, because for decision makers, I think that the long-term benefits are difficult to let's say, justify against short-term gains. So that's how I could maybe say about how to include the circular part in the approaches that we are looking at.
Oh, thank you very much for giving less than 4 minutes. We saved 2 minutes. So that's a very interesting discussion now we have. I would like to invite audience to come forward now so that we have a little bit discussion around the topic, not only one way forward. So if there is any question, but if not, I will also come back to the panelists. If there are any burning question, please identify yourself. Can we have additional microphone here? Do we have additional microphone, please? Yeah, hand phone, I mean, whatever. That's only one? We don't have, okay, no problem. Please identify yourself and also identify from whom you want to ask question, or you can just pose the question.
Thank you. So this is Francesca Antonelli from Wetlands International. Very rich discussion, very intense, but there is one question that I actually would like to pose to all of the panelists, which is to say, we are hosted by the COP, the climate COP, and what's happening right now is that from the GST document, which is the very crucial one, water has been wiped out. I think this is water or water-related ecosystems. So my question to the panelists is, what do you think is going to be the consequence of having a COP concluding without any mention to water? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let me take one more question, one or two more questions, and then we go to the panelists. If not, we can go. I mean, this is a very, very tough question. We have to answer why we are here, whether our work is not getting into the negotiation table, how we can get to that table so that water can be included. Who want to take this? John.
Thank you so much. It's a great question. Francesca, is that right? Wetlands International is a great organization, and I'm so glad that you asked that. This is a decision that's going to be made over the next couple of days, and people right now are really fighting to make sure that there are lots of other ecosystems that are mentioned, other types of systems, but water has been very purposefully left out, and I think mostly because of issues of circularity and transboundary management, that it's a politically tense and fraught issue. That said, like, it is a really destructive absence. And if to put it in climate mitigation terms and carbon terms, to me, it's a little bit like talking about cars without talking about roads, talking about trains without the tracks. It's talking about barges without the canals. So we have to think about what it actually is connecting all of these elements, these other ecosystems, and it's our freshwater systems. It's the freshwater cycle itself that actually is the powerful means of connection. The really positive message, however, I would say, is on what I really think is the most important, but the least referred to potential outcome from this COP, and it's the GGA, the Global Goal and Adaptation. And it is also very fraught and tense because when we make a decision, it's going to reorganize everything that we're doing. The GGA has the potential to be that powerful. And there, water has been at the top. Each iterative version of the GGA that has come out over this COP so far, water is at the very top of that list. So there's a contrast there. There's a sense, what is it we need to measure to know if we're moving forward or away from resilience? Water is right there. But in terms of what is it that we're supposed to be managing in terms of this particular issue with the GST, we're very nervous about it. And just a quick last point, we have a program, we're going to do a big announcement, the UK is going to do a big announcement on it in a couple of days, scaling up, but it's one that we do with the UK government, with the Netherlands, with the Inter-American Development Bank, with UNDP, with others, called the Water Tracker for National Climate Planning. So the GST is focused on how are our NDCs doing, our national climate plans doing? Are they on track or off track? The Water Tracker is a way to look inside of the NDCs and see where the water is hidden, where the potential risks of not seeing the water, and also how to turn those into opportunities and synergies. We're working with 24 countries on that. In fact, we just met with Anna in Brazil 2 weeks ago to sign on Brazil as a new water tracker country, and the UK government will announce in 2 days 11.5 million pounds going to the tracker. So with Deltaris actually is one of the key partners. Thank you.
Yes, there are some positivity. Lifeng, you want to come in? Okay. I also invite audience if they want to respond to, okay?
Yeah, I think that's exactly why we need to launch the partnership that really promote water and food into the climate systems. I feel from the water community, probably we should really learn about how to get the carbon issues, finally agreed in Paris. I think we need a similar process to how to really elevate water into the UNCCC process, and similarly, hopefully after some COPs, then we have the similar agreement like the Paris Agreement, really reflect the water in this CCC process. And wipe out the water from the GST, that's going to have a huge impact in the future. As I said, climate it's two coins, two sides of the same coin. On the one side, dealing with carbon or greenhouse emission. The other side is really about water. Whether you look at that from the climate impact perspective, how much natural disasters really due to the water. We heard that there's too much water, too less water, and then water in wrong place, water in the wrong time, and any combination of that, right? So if we're dealing with adaptation, we keep saying that 90% of adaptation activities is really dealing with how to manage water wisely. And I can give you another example from the food sector. Everybody heard like the UN Food System Summit back to 2021. Come out from the UN Food Summit, 115 countries developed their national food security pathways. And then I asked my team to look at, okay, can you check among those 115 food pathways, how many of them mentioned water and addressed water meaningfully? Guess. How many? 30%. 30% of the national food security pathways mention water meaningfully. The rest of the 70% never bothered. The water blindness, that's the big elephant we have to address here and also through the systematic approach. And even within those 70% of the food security pathways, in many of those countries, they're exactly facing water scarcity challenge.
Thank you so much. It shows that within the water community, there is no problem. The problem is to get into the climate community or with the negotiator. And one of the things that I just want to refer to you, there was a journal editorial article after UN 2023 Water Conference, and which recognized one of the main outcome of that conference. It's from the scientific community, by the way. Global science-based assessment validated by countries, and at the level of IPCC kind of intergovernmental validation is a game changer. So it's a scientific community recognized. If we can get that kind of a visibility of a nationally validated report internationally at the intergovernmental level, perhaps that can go to the discussion table. Anyone wants to come in this discussion? Yes.
I mean, I think we all have a very important role to play, yeah? And I'm thinking about also making sure that water is really well reflected in all NDC, NAP programs, because if water appears there, then actually it's happening already. Looking at the bright side of this, it's happening more and more. If water is present there, then that means that is a trigger then for further development of projects that somehow really recognize the importance of water and climate resilience. And I think we all, I mean, there we also as ADB and as other multilateral development bank, we have really a possibility to influence this process. And unfortunately, it's not surprising that also when the Paris Agreement was signed, it's not, unfortunately, you see always water there appearing in these documents, but at least there is a space where we can play a role and we can influence and make sure that water is really high on the agenda. And from there on, then you have the space to make sure that projects are being developed and implemented that address water in climate resilience. Thank you.
Thank you so much. One of our panelists who is dialing from 3 a.m. in the morning, Lara, I want to come back to you if you have any thoughts in this ongoing discussion.
Yes, Anil, thank you. I would say that when you're talking about adaptation, it's a question of so many terms, and the water is one of the most important of this equation. And when we remove it, of course, we are decreasing the accuracy of what we're going to see and deal in the future. I like to say the water has its own agenda, and if we don't take this in an account, we are going to face the consequences, because the water don't play the script we use to write for it. And if we ignore it, it will be, I think we will face things that were easy to predict, or at least possible, and we are not going to do it. And what we are saying in Brazil, it is if we don't have water, we have hunger, we have social injustice, and we have exploration of human and the youth as well. So I think we should make an effort to bring the water to these agendas and to these letters and all to these places, because it's not about what we want, it's just the intrinsic nature of the water. It's the subsidies for everything, agriculture, social justice, and the SDGs as well. So I think we have an important role here and what we're going to do about it as well. So thank you for the lady from the Wetlands International for this very important question.
Thank you so much. Before I take final question, this water tracker, John, I think this will also contribute for the countries to have assessment what kind of water resources assessment they have, including financial assessment, capacity development assessment, and flood and drought assessment or crash fair assessment. So this is one of the things that UNESCO is going to start piloting in countries. We will have in Korea pavilion, they are going to announce it, but also in the IPCC pavilion. I think there is a lots of synergy from this discussion around. So any final question before we close this session? We have many other sessions, but if there is any final question, otherwise I will ask panelists to give their 30-second key talk. Yes, please.
Peter Mahal from South Sudan, Minister of Water. I think the concern that we are reiterating about the climate summit that does not include much of water is a concern from the researchers yourself who are in the water sector. Like, for instance, there will be a discussion tomorrow about the ocean and which will capture some of the waters. It is good when there is a discussion within that, those points has to be reiterated and appear in the final documents. So it comes back on us. We don't put it as an agenda. We complain outside, but when there is a negotiation, we don't appear. So that is a concern. Tomorrow, I think there will be ocean, and that will capture some of the water. So I'm urging all the water experts, like those panelists, to raise that concern. That is my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency Minister, for highlighting. Undersecretary, yes.
Hello, good morning. I'm Alok Sikka with the International Water Management Institute based in Delhi. I know that we have been talking about water as an adaptation, but I think we have to also stress much upon water as for mitigation. There are a whole lot of things that water management can help in doing the mitigation, but I think that has never been highlighted. And so in addition to adaptation, I think we must make a best use of and best kind of a platform to see that how best we can push the agenda of water as mitigator. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Water role for mitigation. UN Water, on behalf of UN Water, which is co-led by UNESCO, WMO, and UNEC, we have started a study, water dependencies, particularly its role on mitigation. The one publication is out, we launched here, so probably that will be addressed. So with that, I think we are now coming to the closure of this panel discussion. We have a wrap-up and closure by Dr. Abu Omani. But before that, I would like to again invite you to remain in the Water Pavilion throughout the day. We have a youth debate at 11. We have flood and drought discussion and high-level concluding session later in the day. So we have a whole day discussion about how to upscale climate-resilient water management approaches in the context of circular economy. With that, let's give a big round of applause to all the panelists. And I would like to invite Dr. Abu Omani, Director of Water Science Division, Secretary of Intergovernmental Hydrological Program, UNESCO. You can be seated to give his some observation and close the session. Abu.
Thank you very much, Anil. And what a first session, really very rich in terms of contribution, in terms of ideas. So it will be very difficult for me to provide to you all the quintessence of this discussion, but I want to highlight some elements. And I want to start with this issue of telling the story. Because, you know, when all this issue of COP started, there was no water pavilion. And progressively, the water community realized the critical importance of having water within the discussions. And then by that energy, we were able to start having water pavilion. I think this is a good move. So let's continue conveying the message, telling the story. And we believe that we have elements to tell the story. Of course, for adaptation, it's obvious. All those extremes, drought, floods, they are water directly related. And this is where I think we should take the opportunity of crisis to tell the story. And we hear at least 2-3 examples of taking opportunity of crisis. The example of Australia was a very good example. And also the example highlighted by for Cape Town. So telling the story, that is the way forward. Now, when we look at also the other discussion, we need actions on the ground. So leadership is needed. First, at the level of decision makers, and second, at the level of communities. Because communities are the ones who are feeling the unfortunate consequences of the issue of lack of water, the issue of floods, the issue of drought. So we need to work together with them to identify what are the issues and to design appropriate measures to adapt. And this is where we have this approach of CRIDA, climate risk informed analysis, bottom-up approach, listening to those who are really are at the core of the challenges I've been facing, so that we can co-design solution together. Without that, the buy-in, it will be very difficult for politicians to be on the stone in terms of supporting their community to find solutions. In that sense, we should continue raising awareness. Raising awareness on the fact that water is a connector. We hear about it, connecting variety of other sectors, and also it is a system of system. Why system of system? Because in addition to the water cycle, we need also other cycles. We have the waste cycle, we have the energy cycle. So all those cycles are intertwined. So in terms of reflection, we should move forward in system thinking. I know that we'll have discussion later on that, but I think from my take, this is the clear way forward. The other elements concern the capacity building. This is one of the missing elements sometimes when it's come to practically taking action on the ground. Because there is a lot of missing capacity at human resource level and also at institutional level. And we have a variety of tools available. We should make those tools accessible so that those who need them have access to them to solve challenges we are facing on the ground. So those are really the main point I identify. Of course, not all the point, but I believe that moving forward we have opportunity in terms of discussions. Of course, this issue of adaptation mitigation is essential for us in telling the story. Of course, as I said, for adaptation is almost evident for all of us. But even for mitigation, as Anil highlighted, we started an initial study, but we have element also which can help us also to tell the story regarding the issue of mitigation. As you know, within the unit system, a variety of reports were produced. For example, I can highlight the report on the waste water in tap resources, the linkages between the energy and the water. We have also all the issue related to water and energy. This was also another publication. We have also nature-based solution publication. So all those are knowledge generated, which we need to really use in order to convey the story. So let's continue the discussions. As Anil highlighted, we have other sessions coming up. And our aim, of course, is to wrap up at the end in the afternoon so that we can see what is the best way forward for us in order to continue telling the story that water is part of the solution to the issue of climate change. Thank you. Yes, Dan, thank you.